Welcome to 1850 Main Street, a place where friends get together and talk about their country and hope for a brighter future. Today, Rob Walgate and Alan C. Duncan from the Public Square are joined by David Zanotti, the CEO of the American Policy Roundtable.
Is it really as hopeless as it feels for first-time home buyers trying to break into the housing market?
Okay, so I read an article that made me mad, stressed me out a little bit.
Wait a minute. Do we all get to guess what it could be? Because there's like a list.
There is a list
of articles that could make you mad.
Well, here's the funny thing. I didn't know
Chesterton was voted the third best writer. No, sorry. All right, I digress.
Oh my goodness, that's good. That's funny. I didn't know that Zillow was putting out articles. That's the thing. I know Zillow as I want to check how much home prices are in my area, that kind of a thing. I didn't know they were putting out articles now, but apparently they are, and I'm appreciative of it, even though it did kind of stress me out a little bit. But I came upon one with the headline, "Home buyers need to earn $47,000 more dollars than in 2020." Okay. Sub-headline, "The income needed to comfortably afford a home is up 80% since 2020, while median income has risen 23% in that time." What do you guys think about that?
Well, I think anyone that has attempted to buy a home in the last couple of years understands that and sees it. And coupling that with interest rates, some people are saying it's not realistic that they will move anytime in the near future.
Which only makes the problem more difficult. What I see is an opportunity for a blatant plug for the Public Square radio broadcast, which for some folks that are brand new to 1850 Main Street is another format of conversation that we have on public policy and anything that has to touch on the arena of public life on the Public Square. And we had an excellent conversation several months ago with Bill Cosgrove, who is the head of Union Home Mortgage and has a tremendous story on his own personal ascendancy and rise as a part of the American dream to become the CEO and the owner of that company, but a passionate plea for Mr. Cosgrove on the urgency of getting the American housing market fixed and understanding it from the macro to the micro. It's a wonderful broadcast. You can find it at thepublicsquare.com. Look for Bill Cosgrove, Cosgrove, and he had a wonderful presentation. And so we learned a lot in that. And
we'll try to link that in the show notes of some of these broadcasts as well. Depending on where folks are hearing this, we'll try to make sure we get the link to that broadcast in there. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, Dave.
That's okay. Well, there's all kinds of pieces and parts to this. Interest rates, Rob, as you mentioned, or salaries, the whole crisis of corporations coming in, major corporations coming in and buying up homes and then treating them like credit swap defaults, or where they were basic credit default swaps, and never get those words right. But like the junk bonds and the junk loans that happened to cause the crash in 2008. Companies come in and they buy lots and lots of rental properties, and then they encourage investors to invest in the corporation, if you will, in their LLC or whatever their corporate structure might be. And then in essence, they chop up the profits from the rent profitability and share it with their investors. Well, that sounds interesting when you first walk through it, but then you realize that what we're doing is bad on a zillion levels. It's really a bad idea. And Mr. Cosgrove says it best. And of course, he wouldn't claim credit for this, but if you want to talk about the way to have the free enterprise system work for the most amount of people in a culture, home ownership should be your goal, because it's something we all have to do. We have to have a roof over our heads. And if you have home ownership and you're able to keep home ownership, no matter how poorly you may start in the process, by the time you get to the end of it, if you're responsible, you will have accumulated significant wealth. And that's how family structures grow and prosper, is a little at a time, accumulating wealth by personal responsibility over time. And home ownership is the fastest portal to that.
Well, it used to be. It seems like that's one of the big issues with this article, because I agree with you, Dave. I mean, you try to get into a home and you have an opportunity to pay it down, and you're building equity, and by the end of it, hopefully you can pay it off. You've got an asset now, and you're really building wealth. But when you're looking at what this article is saying, I'm thinking about my kids moving forward. What's going to be there for them? Because it's saying that a monthly mortgage payment on a typical U.S. home has nearly doubled since 2020. I mean, this is a pace. How do you sustain a pace like this? It's funny that this also says wages have not kept up. I think it's always odd when we talk about inanimate things as if they're doing it. These wages need to keep up. Come on, wages, pick up the pace. We're doing it. We have not structured our culture in such a way for wages to be where they need to be, so that people can keep up with rising housing prices, or we've allowed housing prices to explode out of control. So we're doing it to ourselves. It's not the wages' fault. So I just find that interesting.
So let's talk about it. And obviously, the economy is a part of the election conversation, but we can talk about this without mentioning a single candidate by name, no matter what race they're running for, because, Alan, you're right. We did this to ourselves. The first thing that we did that was a tragic mistake was to move away from an energy independence policy and from a policy of securing all the new technologies that we possibly could for energy, including fracking, including shale, including ANWR, all the things that we were doing that was driving gasoline down. I was doing some research for Christmas in America for that broadcast at the public square that I hope everyone will tune in and listen to. You miss a lot. You can stick with this conversation a lot of ways. But I was doing the research for Christmas in America in 1973, and I was looking at gasoline prices because back in 1973, we had an oil embargo. There was a war in 1973. An allied group of Arab nations allied and went and on Yom Kippur in October, they attacked Israel. And there was a war that lasted about a month. Now, Israel won the war, but part of the recompense of that war was that anyone that allied themselves with Israel faced the wrath of OPEC. And OPEC did their first big embargo against the United States of America. Now, prior to that embargo, you could go back 20 years and gasoline in America was about 30 cents a gallon. And if you consider inflation was exceptionally low, but even at the lowest number, in essence, gasoline was costing less year after year. Now, flip that to where we've gone to, where the prices in some cases have almost tripled over a period of 4 years. And you are looking at an inflation rate that is astronomical, and it is touching everything. And so the Federal Reserve says because inflation's so high, they're going to jack interest rates through the sky. One results in the other. Now look at what we got.
Well, when I was watching the vice presidential debate a few weeks ago, and they asked the question on inflation, and they blamed housing prices, and my phone immediately buzzed because it was DZ texting me, and the fact that it's actually energy prices that are driving inflation to the point they were. And J.D. Vance rightly answered the question and pointed it directly towards energy and the cause for all of that. So, yeah, there's an underlying theme in all of this. The problem is the politicians don't want to seem to, I won't even say get to it. I think in a lot of instances even recognize it. And that's one of the things that Mr. Cosgrove talked about. He talked about the fact of we've never had interest rates as high as they are with as limited supply and as high as demand of homes as we have. So somewhere something has to happen in a way that we've never seen happen because we're in uncharted territory.
Yeah, the inventory question is also a big problem with that. And that, again, goes back to corporations coming in, building only rental units or building only multifamily units where they're going to be rented condos because the cost of everything is so high, driven by energy that builders they know they can't build single family homes. Taxes have gone up on builders to gain access to lots. These are all things that the folks at Union Home Mortgage were able to show us, because they face this every single day. And the challenges of this. So it's a multi-layered problem, but it starts with costs of materials driven by energy, cost of loans driven by energy. I mean, all of these things driven by inflation. And so we've got to change the fundamental building blocks on this process. And then obviously we got to get creative as well. But what's interesting is of course, come on, this idea that wages can ever keep up with inflation. I'm telling you right now, I know I didn't get that kind of pay raise. In fact, I know you two guys didn't either. We're not
Please
keeping
like
up
and
here.
subscribe to
Do you want to know who and what is going to be on your ballot this November? Check out ivoters.com and enter your address and zip code. No name, no phone number, and no email address required. Find out who all the candidates are, who's endorsing them, and who's funding them. We're not bound to any political parties, candidates, or campaigns at iVoters, and we won't tell you who to vote for. You're smart enough to figure that out for yourself. What we will do is give you all the facts and none of the fanfare. Did we mention it's free? Free minds, free speech, free agents. iVoters.com, a public service of the American Policy Roundtable.
Well, that is interesting. Speaking of wages, there's a portion of this piece that we're reviewing where it says where a home is most and least affordable. So I thought this was interesting. We're going to name some cities here. Metro areas where a buyer could comfortably afford a typical home with the lowest income are Pittsburgh, about $58,000 income needed to afford a home. Memphis, almost $70,000. Cleveland, about $70,000. New Orleans, $74,000, and Birmingham, $74,000. So the Cleveland area is where we're roughly recording from right now. So I enjoyed seeing Cleveland on the list, I guess. Like is that a good thing? I suppose.
Yeah, but the thing is in every one of those communities, houses go up for sale and they're sold before they're even listed. I mean,
Yeah.
realtors are dropping like flies because there's no inventory.
They're off the market in no time. Yeah. And I would say we could look a little bit further in the sense there where it talks about the lowest incomes needed to buy the home. However, when you look at where the highest are, what is one major difference between the highest and lowest in the sense of, and that's the tax rate in the communities in which those are, or the states in which those people live. That's another thing that can drive prices through the roof in the sense of wages need to be earned. Because why? Because people have to pay the tax bill. Right. That's what's coming, unfortunately, the first thing that people are grabbing right off the top.
Do you want to list some of those highest ones? Do you have that?
Yeah, Seattle, San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Jose, and San Diego. I mean, four of those are, or three are, would be, two would be, look at me counting down. Four are in California, two are in Southern California, but we know the tax structure and that base that takes place in California. And California is always, or at least in recent times, has been an outlier when it comes to wages and expectations, home prices, so many different things. They're just out of touch with reality, and it's going to come to a crash at some point.
Well, Americans aren't going to stand for this very long. And, changing politicians sometimes helps. But there's going to require a lot more creative thinking and particularly at the state and local level. To get the housing inventories up is not something that the feds are going to be able to do much on, other than finding a way to bring us back to an energy platform that enables us to have some sense of predictability on the cost of materials. That's critical. But a lot of this stuff is going to be state and local in regards, as you guys mentioned, taxes and in regards to development zones, but also families. Families. You guys are too young to remember immigrant families still having 3 or 4 families coming over a period of years where there was always someone living with them, getting to launch their way into America. I remember that. I was a kid watching it, but I remember it. My wife remembers it very well because she saw her whole German family get from Germany, over to here, and the stories that were told in all of those pieces and parts. So we're going to have some serious creativity, and we're going to have some people lending hands and helping. There's all kinds of ways to beat this, but we're not going to be able to beat it singularly. And it's not just a political problem. It's going to take a lot of service and a lot of time and a lot of thought. And we're getting deeper into the problem. And the deeper you go, the longer it takes you to get out. Now, there's kind of one weird thing that we can talk about. And that's the weird thing is because we're facing a very serious depopulation problem in the United States, the demand for new homes 20 years from now is not going to be what it is right now.
Well, and you hate for that to be the reason.
Yeah. No, it's not based on the birth rates that are happening. But that also gets to something Mr. Cosgrove talked about when it comes to new home construction. One of his passions, one of the things he talks about is those in communities, those inner ring suburbs that are around major cities all across the country that seem to become even more and more vacated because people are moving out and continuing to move out. Maybe they are moving back in to the urban center and the urban core, but those inner ring suburbs kind of get left out of the picture with the infrastructure that's needed, with the roads. But some of them have great homes that were built in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, a little TLC. Those homes would be amazing homes for people to have as maybe starter homes, maybe long-term homes. Who knows? There's ways that this problem can be addressed and fixed. And it's going to be, it may be something that ends up being a public-private partnership to see everyone excel.
Sure. And I'll throw one more piece into this, and this does get political and in a big way. You can't maintain a healthy economy at the tax levels that we're at. And there are all kinds of politicians trying to dance around the idea that maybe somehow raising taxes is a good idea. Raising taxes is a really dumb idea. It's fundamentally flawed. It's just plain dumb. It's about the equivalent of having an egg toss, okay, where you're the only one that's got a real egg, everybody else is hard-boiled. I mean, it's just a really dumb idea to try to play the game this way. It's stupid. Taxes in and of themselves, while they may be necessary for shared expenses and should be paid, I'm not suggesting evasion. The idea of what I heard Joe Biden do and say so many times during his presidency was, we're America. If we just get together, and use his hands and just everybody get together, there's nothing we can't do. Yeah, well, the only problem is, Joe, we can do a lot of wrong stuff getting together too. And whenever we're in this idea of let's pretend we're making a pot of money. The federal government has no money. All right, federal government has no money. So if we pretend we've got this pot of money, and if we just reprioritize it, we can make life better for people. That's just plain stupid. Because it'd be like calling monopoly money real. That's not real money.
At the federal government, it's too far away from you now. It's too far away. That's why you talked about people joining together, but like family and friends and local levels. And that's what this article even mentions. It talks about buyers are teaming up and house hacking, moving into more affordable areas. They're renting out rooms or going in with friends or relatives to buy a house together. So yeah, there is a coming together aspect of it, but it's not at the federal government level.
We've got to get more income. We can't get more income by more taxes. No matter what anybody tells you, you can't get more income from more taxes. It never works that way, ever. It never, ever works. So we've got to have a change of mind, and that's got to start from the bottom up also.
I agree. And I think there'll be another place where some more properties are going to become available. One thing that we've seen explode over the last 5 to 10 years are short-term rentals. The Airbnbs, the VRBOs, there's so many of those that are owned by people. And if people stop traveling or something, once those stop making money, those are going to become on the market as for sale properties that people are going to be able to live in. It'd be amazing to some folks to realize how many of those operate. I'm not trying to call to close them down or to get rid of them or anything like that. I just think supply and demand is going to hit that industry sooner rather than later.
Well, and I think it'd be a mistake to leave this conversation without this reality, because this is a very hopeless scenario for young people. And we've been watching it. We watch it through all of our families. It's very, very discouraging. It's one thing to have a home and feel trapped. It's another to feel like you'll never get one. That's a very difficult position to be in. So yeah, we've got to rally at the bottom for these folks. We really do. We really have to help them get on board. And we have to have political change, but we also can't lose hope. This is not just about shifting people like they're parts on a game board. The Bible says, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. One of the biggest problems we have in our economic structure is fear, and the second is greed. And when we don't believe that God is the one who gives us the sunrise every morning and that sunset, who gives us every breath we have and every sane thought that we hope for, right? That God is our resource, our refuge, our strength, our hope for provision, that he cares about us. Therefore, we can care about each other. If you try to run a free market economy in the godless equation, you run off the cliff because you have no way to deal with the psychological fear and greed factors. You can't do it. You can't have the restraint to be able to love your neighbor as you love yourself. You can't play the game fair. So we can't give up hope in God, because that's where this whole thing started in the first place. And it'd be remiss for us to ever talk about economics and not say, let's not forget the person who owns everything, he cares a lot.
The conversations are just getting started. To get connected, check out 1850mainstreet.com. We don't data mine anyone or sell your information. Subscribe today so you don't miss a single conversation. We'll see you next time here at 1850 Main Street.